Hi, friends. Welcome back to Not Again, the podcast that brings college-level analysis to preschool-level content. And yeah, it's been a while. I know that wasn't part of the intro, but it's been a while. So I'm your host, Rebecca. Your host, Alan, is not here. I am in Philadelphia, and that means that instead of Alan, either forever, and by forever I mean for the next few months, or at least for the next couple episodes, I have my good friend Martyn, who is sitting next to me this time instead of recording over Skype. Hi, Martyn.
Hello.
So Martyn is going to be joining me today. I'm here because I'm in Glass School, and Glass School's in New Jersey, and I drive to New Jersey several times a week to do it, and it's absolutely amazing. I stabbed myself yesterday.
You should clarify that's by accident.
By accident, yes. So what happens when you use a glass cutter? So you have a round piece of glass, like a rod, and you use a glass cutter to make a little score on it so you can shorten the rod by breaking it on the scoring. So when you break the glass, sometimes a little shard, like it's not even basically. And if you're careless, like I was, when you're cleaning up at the end of a session, I don't know, glass doing
dance.
Time. Yep, the dance of the glass.
Glass dance.
The glass dance. You could attempt to, even out the glass rods that you have in your hand by pressing your palm against the bottoms of them. You know, the way you'd shuffle some paper together. And just stab yourself right in the hand with a little tiny shard of glass. So I did that. That was fun.
It's a dangerous hobby.
It is, but I'm not that dumb. Fortunately, because it's glass, the cut is so precise that it's like already closed up because it's like scalpel thin. So that's enough talking about my blood. I'm fine. I haven't burned myself yet, so that's good. And I'm learning a lot, but I am away from my family, and that is really hard. I got to admit, a part of me was like, what if I don't even feel sad? What if I'm just like, woo, freedom, like no kids, no diapers? But like, I would have felt so guilty, but I do miss them every day. Alan, I hope you're listening to this, but I haven't been able to be sure in the past.
It'll be a betrayal if you don't.
Yeah, if you're not listening to this, Alan, things are going to go badly for us.
Instant divorce.
Instant divorce, as if you said a really bad pun. But I do miss you, and I miss our sons, and I miss our home. But my best friend, Heather Sinclair, and her partner, Martyn, who's sitting next to me, have opened their home to me. And so Martyn's going to be here probably a little bit more often if I can coerce them into doing so.
You don't have to coerce me. I love this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So today, that is our very long introduction. We are finally getting back into it. I am also going to try to get back into regular releases. We'll see how it goes. We are going to talk, I'm going to call this part one. We're going to talk about Ratatouille. So, spoiler alert for all of the movie Ratatouille. So, your experience. So, I saw Ratatouille in theaters, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I think I found it difficult, even though I loved it, and even then, to believe the, like, pulling on the hair thing. Like, the suspension of disbelief was pretty difficult for, like, oh, he's a puppet. But I really loved it. And this is now one of the movies that Warren has watched again and again, so it qualifies for this podcast. We call it Mousy because he likes mice. And he has not yet learned to expand his schema from like mice to mice and rats. So everything that looks like a mouse is a mouse. And his favorite part is when Remy comes jumping out the window. He finds it hilarious. But I have seen Ratatouille again and again now. And as such, I have some more thoughts about it than originally. Yeah. So we watched it together recently as well.
Last week, I think.
Yeah. And we definitely, I was taking notes like mad. And yeah, so what was your first experience with Ratatouille? You see it in theaters?
No, I saw it. I think it may have been on a streaming service even. I wasn't really super into a lot of Disney stuff as a kid, and as I got into a teenager, I kind of moved away from it pretty hard.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the Pixar stuff, later Pixar stuff, kind of passed me by. Kind of post Toy Story 2, I kind of fell off it and didn't really get into it.
Yeah, I think I've said this before. I think probably on our Brave episode I said this, but like I considered myself a Pixar fan right up until like, I think Brave was kind of the turning point for me. I was on the fence with Up and WALL-E, where I was like, oh, this is cute, you know?
Well, Brave stands out as being one of the few ones I did see in theaters.
Yeah.
And it was just chance, really.
You were on the Brave episodes. In case for some reason somebody's new to the podcast, hello. Normally I do this with my husband, Alan. He's not here. Martyn is a guest. Martyn is a good friend. And they were on 2 episodes, I believe.
I think it was a 2-part.
Yeah, I think it was either 19 and 20 or 20 and 21. And so you can go back and see about, they'll definitely have bears in the titles. So if you want to know more about Martyn and hear more from Martyn, there are more episodes in the past backlog that you can listen to. Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see this one in theaters. I think I have a pretty vague memory of watching it with Heather the first time I saw it, because it was one of her favorites at the time. Of the Pixar movies, and we occasionally get a mood for these things, so we went back and we watched it, and it was relatively recently. I was definitely an adult when I saw it for the first time, not a child. So.
And did you like it?
I remember quite enjoying it, feeling there was a few things about it that didn't really click, but overall quite enjoying it,
Yeah, okay.
It holds together a little better than most Pixar movies, I think.
Yeah, we can just, here's my catchphrase, jump right into it. I always say that after we haven't jumped right into it. We've done a lot of digressions, so I guess it's ironic or something. My first point is that this movie has the Brave problem, where it's a movie about France that hates French people. And in a similar way, because Brave was about Scotland and Scottish people, supposedly. Again, listen to the Brave episodes. And quite like this movie, it clearly appreciated the land, the countryside, in the case of Brave, and the city of Paris in the case of Ratatouille, but it hated the people. It was all stereotypes, to the point where the protagonists have American accents, and they just keep taking cheap shots at French people. You know, like, we hate to be rude, but we're French. And the reason I put this at the beginning is because of the snarky opening TV narration, where
That's
he's like,
right, yeah.
A lot of countries claim to have good food, but everybody in France knows the best food comes from France, or whatever.
Yeah, but
that snobbish attitude that, like, it's all stereotypical and stuff. So it's like, don't set your movie in a place and then hate that place. Was my first note. This was your note here. The introduction of Remy.
Oh, yeah. They did the freeze frame, like, I bet you're wondering how I got here a bit. They just rephrased the introductory statement a little bit. So, yeah, there's a scene at the beginning where he jumps through a window and it freeze frames.
Warren's favorite scene.
Yeah, Warren's favorite scene. And it's just such a cliche, like, to the point where when normally it's done in a film these days, they're so aware that it's such a cliche that it's played as a joke that they're doing it.
Yeah.
In this case, that wasn't done here. They just unironically redid that scene.
Well, they thought that if they surround it with unusual enough circumstances, but I actually think that, especially in a world where we just, like, have fiction where, like, unusual circumstances happen all the time, so it's not, we're kind of inured to it in a way. As an introductory line, not only is it a variation on that cliche, it's kind of weak.
Yeah.
Because his line is, "This is me." And my first question, and any audience member's question, is going to be like, it's so the same thing to, so you're wondering how I got here. Like, no, I don't, like, so who cares?
I mean, ostensibly the purpose of that line is to create tension. You know, you set up a scene where it's, oh, I wonder how we're going to get to this sequence from what follows.
Starting in medias res.
Yeah. So, like, but the problem is that the event that leads to this freeze frame scene is so soon after the beginning of the story that it doesn't really hold any tension. There doesn't seem to be much point to it.
Yeah, we literally got from, I lived in the backyard of this old lady's house, or actually not, in the attic of this old lady's house, to now I'm leaving the old lady's house.
Yeah.
And we will talk about people's reactions to rats in this movie. But first, my next note is about the morals of this movie. This is tricky. Because it goes throughout, and we're also supposed to find a lesson, so to speak. So we're going to have to kind of, like, pick apart what they were trying to say. But the morality of this movie is Remy is constantly dogged by his conscience in the form of Gusteau, Chef Gusteau, to not steal. And even before that, when they're eating their garbage pile with his dad, there are no female rats. Pixar really just doesn't care about women in any capacity. Even rat women is too much. He says, I don't want to steal food. And his dad is like, it's garbage. We're not stealing. And his dad is right, first of all. Like, if I saw somebody going through my trash can, I'd be like, that's gross. But I wouldn't be like, that person's stealing
There's
from me.
something I want to point out about
Yeah.
that, though. There's a point just before that that completely contradicts that. Because what happens is, Remy asked his dad, why don't we get the food from inside the house? And his dad says, we're not thieves.
Yes, that's it.
So it's his dad that draws the distinction there between what they do and theft.
Yeah.
And then goes on to say, this is garbage, it's not theft.
Right.
They've already thrown it out.
But it gets so complicated. So his dad is like, hey, it's garbage, we can take it. And he's right. And he also says explicitly, do not go near the kitchen. It's too close to humans. Humans are dangerous, right? Very Little Mermaid message there, right?
Yeah.
Don't go near the humans, right?
Well, it's so weird the way they play it, because if you're watching this film for the first time and you don't know what comes later, what he says implies to me that they don't do it as a moral principle. They don't steal from people because that's a bad thing to do. We later know that they don't do it because it's dangerous. Humans kill rats. Right? So they just slaughter rats constantly.
Yes.
So he is telling Remy not to take that risk because it's too dangerous. But at this point in the film, we don't know that. So it sets up this moral dilemma to be something that isn't really represented by what we see.
And is completely misused.
Yeah.
So the only way to do this is to jump around a bit. So my least favorite scene is when, well, there's so many. This isn't even true. I just lied. It's not my least favorite scene. I suppose in the morality arc, my least favorite scene is when Remy has been convinced by his hallucination Gusteau to go up and look around because he's lost his family. And so he climbs through I guess it would be an apartment building of sorts, because there's lots of families and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be an apartment building.
Yeah. So he goes through the apartment building and he ends up at somebody's holding a party. So they've got wine, cheese, bread, whatever. And he finds a crumb of bread that has fallen off of a baguette. He's starving and he's about to eat it. And his hallucination is like, no, you're not a thief. Don't be a thief. And I'm like, no, he can just eat that crumb of bread. He's starving. Like, we've already played this morality thing out of like, is it okay to steal food if you're starving, kind of thing. Like, it's not like a human being was going to be like, hey, where's that crumb of bread? I left that here for later. It was for me.
No, someone stole my crumb.
Someone stole my crumb. There's an entire loaf of bread right next to it, and he's trying to steal like enough to fill a rat's belly. And this idea is, I found a lesson. Stealing is bad. You have to earn the right to eat. And that's a bad lesson, which is because it connects us to another thing, which is this idea that if you are starving and you want food, you should be working for it. And this should sound familiar to some people, this argument of if you want food and shelter and healthcare, you should work for it and work your way up. And this led me to the realization that the rats are quite an uncomfortable allegory.
Yeah, there's a few different ways you could look at this. I think there's one of the kind of the easier ones to process, I think, is that, and I think you have a note to this effect as well, is that, especially considering it's set in Paris, it's French, it's kind of drawing in shades of Les Miserables. Excuse my pronunciation, my French is terrible.
Mine's worse.
And it's taking the kind of moral core of Les Miserables and kind of flipping it, where it's creating a point at which a character has to face adversity in order to learn the lesson that Javert wants to teach, the lesson that legality is important.
Is paramount.
That you should never break the law under any circumstances.
Yeah.
And that you will be punished for doing it, and that punishment will be just.
Morality is black and white. And then we also have this thing, though, that who are the people who are told they need to work for food, right? And it's so we could say that rats are a metaphor for poor people, or we could say that they're a metaphor for immigrants, considered the way that they are kept as outsiders and treated like garbage. But poor people are also treated like garbage. It's not a happy society we live in.
There are a few things I think, and I don't think most of this is intentional. I think a lot of it is just a coincidence of the tropes that they're employing here.
Yeah, accidental subtext.
Yeah,
is
and the
word.
politics that Brad Bird tends to kind of stir into the pot on these.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a situation where, for example, they are the rats are primarily portrayed as people who have no fixed home. They have different accents from most of the people around them. Most of the human beings around them have French accents, except for the one.
Linguini.
Linguini, who is
the one with the fake Italian name.
Implied to be not French, I think. But it's not exactly clear where he is supposed to be from. The uncomfortable conclusion that kind of brings you to is that the rats are representative of an immigrant population of some kind. So this leads to a lot of... And again, I want to kind of emphasize, I don't think this was intentional.
Yeah, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt,
I think that subtext is definitely there.
Yeah, it's dicey.
And I can't...
It's very dicey.
There's too much pointing towards it that I can't overlook it.
Yeah.
So they have this underclass of sapient beings, essentially people. They have language, they have music, they have cuisine.
Yeah.
They are able to communicate with people. They understand complicated human topics.
Oh yeah, I was reminded of the Travelers in Chocolat when they had like their music and like it was like a very specific like genre of music, and I just like whatever metaphor they purposefully or again benefit of the doubt accidentally went for. It is super uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you consider the really, really dark history of comparing immigrant populations and traveller populations to pest animals.
Cockroaches and rats.
Let's not go too deep into that because I think we could talk about that for a long time.
Yes.
It's really grim, so we won't get too deep into it.
It's super grim,
But needless to say, I think it's there in the film and I think it's kind of uncomfortable.
It's pretty uncomfortable. Yeah. I liked what you said about how he could only attain success by like working through a person who is
this is what I want to talk to next.
Yeah.
With that in mind, you get to kind of a strange reading of the film that I think actually fits really well with what we see in the text, where Remy, the rat, this representation of an immigrant experience, can only attain personal success by literally puppeting the most privileged person he can find.
Yeah.
He is a human, he is a white man, and he is inheriting an already successful business by sheer chance. He is as privileged as someone gets in this position, and he has to be literally puppeted to do it. And he continues to benefit from the knowledge and the hard work of the immigrant person controlling his actions, despite having no input of his own whatsoever. Like, it's worth saying, Linguini does nothing in this film that earns him anything that
I think we talked about this, but like, I know he is incompetent, he's set up as clumsy, and he's lost so many jobs, blah, blah, blah. But after being puppeted through a kitchen for weeks upon weeks, don't you start to pick up something? Don't you like know how to chop a vegetable?
Even
but, like,
right up to the end.
He's incompetent right up to the end, so his success is not earned. And we will get back to that, I think, but
I don't want to get too caught in the weeds of arguing over whether or not people have earned it, because ultimately I think that's a trap in its own way.
Yeah, sure.
I don't think you necessarily deserve to live a good life by earning it, and I think that's buying into the moral logic of the film, which does contradict itself with this.
Yes.
But I also think, like, if you're going to accept the lesson this film wants to teach, which is that you have to earn your way up and live a good life by proving you deserve it with hard work and with talent and dedication.
That's a positive spin to put on it.
Well, it's the lesson the film ostensibly wants to teach.
Martyn found the right lesson.
I don't know about that. But that.
Sorry. Yes. Let me rephrase this. Martyn found an intended lesson.
I think that would be an argument of what the director and writer want to communicate.
Yes.
I don't think they do that successfully. The idea that we relate to Linguini as characters and that Linguini is deserving of his part in this success contradicts that lesson, because he literally is only here because he is inheriting a restaurant.
Yeah, he does not work for it according to the film.
Already successful restaurant empire,
right,
which is being run by someone else in the interim who has worked their way there, and who is presented as the villain.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of things in the film that make him into a more villainous character, but I think on the face of it, he's more deserving of this restaurant than Linguini is.
Yeah, he was the sous chef, you know? Exactly. He worked directly with the owner. I mean, yeah. So we'll probably, this will probably pop up a couple more times, but I want to follow their weird morality to the very end, where the rats, so Remy is like, hey, I'm angry at my human companion, and let's not read further into that, and we've had kind of a spat, so I'm going to take my whole colony into the restaurant to steal food. And his dad is delighted with this. He says, wow, an inside job, huh? And it's like, what happened to your stance at the beginning of the movie that you didn't want to go into one old lady's kitchen and now you want to go into a restaurant kitchen all of a sudden? What happened to you? I mean, he literally takes Remy to go see a pest control shop? There's a bunch of dead rats in the window. As if Remy doesn't already know that humans hunt rats, as he was a poison checker in the very beginning of the movie. It's like, he knows.
It's very strange, because it's supposed to be a lesson for Remy. It's supposed to be a point where he, like, learns something, and he looks at it like he's surprised by it. But we know at this point in the movie, he's already aware that this happens.
Yeah, so
it's very strange. This is the point where we're supposed to understand that the dad's reticence to let Remy into the farmhouse at the beginning was because he was afraid it was dangerous.
Yeah.
Why he didn't just say that, I don't know.
Well, he did. He said, don't go near the humans, it's dangerous.
But he also emphasizes much, much more that they're not thieves.
Yeah.
The theft angle, which is also something the films emphasized a lot more up till that point.
Yeah. Oh, and also what really grinds my gears, I guess, what really bothers me is when Remy does eventually get to eat for the first time since going down the sewers, he's in the walk-in fridge with Linguini, and Linguini just grabs some cheese for Remy. Now, it can be argued that he, quote, earned it by getting a job at this restaurant or whatever. But Linguini is not entitled to that cheese, right? Like, it still belongs to the restaurant. And so, in the end, he still consumes stolen food.
But it was something he was given permission to eat by someone from a much more privileged social class.
Right, sure. So I guess that
someone
makes
who
sense.
has literally more rights than him.
Yeah, it's just the line is so blurred between like, oh, this is stealing, but this isn't.
Yeah.
It's like they're two very similar situations.
I think it's the messiness and how poorly considered the metaphor is that creates these really uncomfortable implications.
And oh my god, and they hammer it home too. Like when he makes the omelets, Linguini tastes it and he says, "This is good. Where'd you get this stuff and the ingredients for it?" And Remy points to a garden he saw across the street and he's like, "This is good, but don't steal." And I'm like, whoever's garden that is, they're not going to miss 3 leaves of oregano or whatever. Like, again, it's a crumb of bread situation. It's like, oh my god, I've been cataloging every leaf on this herb and I've noticed that 3 are missing.
Oh no, I'm ruined. My family will starve.
My rooftop garden. Yeah, my family survives on this basil. So, you know, they're just trying to push this message home, and I don't know. And again, it has, I don't want to get into it because, as you said, very grim, but it has such horrible implications if we look at the rats as an allegory for anything like immigrant, poor person, anything like that. The idea like, oh, you're a thief, don't be a thief, be better than that is like, oh, God, eesh. So we'll move on.
So we'll move on to another kind of subject here,
Yes. I think that our next thing, so we talked about the morals in Jean Valjean, Jean Valjean. Oh, I wrote disease and feces everywhere, and I'm not sure.
I mean, that's a given.
But I think we were talking about how people have genuine reason to dislike rats, which is that they tend to spread disease and leave their droppings hither and thither. And so this movie eliminates that as like, why would people dislike rats?
They have a really weird moment though, right, where they show him make a big deal about washing his hands before touching food.
Yeah.
And then he just does it several times without that, so that they draw attention to it makes it weird.
Yeah.
Because if they hadn't, no one would have really thought about it. Like, okay, it's a cartoon, whatever, it doesn't matter. But then they make a point of showing that he does it twice.
Yeah.
And then never again.
And of course it bothers me because a droplet of water does not clean sewer off of your hands or paws. So it's
like the scene at the beginning where he kind of near the beginning where he's adding all the ingredients to the soup that Linguini ruins.
Yeah.
His hands aren't clean when he starts doing that. He has come up off the ground, out of the sewer, and started tossing ingredients.
He grabs a droplet of water off of a
He does that after he's already added some, though.
Does he?
Yeah. So he goes in, throws a couple things in, considers leaving, changes his mind, goes back, washes his hands, and then continues. So he's already added a bunch of bacteria from the sewers into the soup.
Yeah, and he, like, his whole body's covered in it, too. So.
If they just hadn't acknowledged it, it would have been way better.
Yeah. So we have a few things to cover. I want to, at some point, do an episode about the fat stereotype because it occurs so often. So I don't want to go into this too much because I don't want to end up repeating myself later when I do this episode. But for the record, the brother Emile is the typical fat stereotype. And I put that like with capitals, like capital F, capital S. He is overweight. He is there for comic relief. He cannot stop himself from eating, right? He gorges himself. He's a glutton, all that stuff.
It's a recurring joke that he doesn't care about the quality of the food.
And he doesn't care about the quality of the food. He'll eat anything. So, yeah, so he is, we'll talk about this later, but he is eating grapes and then he falls because he just can't let go of that last grape, and it's the thing that catches Linguini's attention, and he notices that Remy is stealing food. But other than that, he's mostly just a comic relief character, and I'm going to be repeating myself later, but you get tired of seeing that.
I think the only point in which it sort of pushes against that a little bit is with the characterization of Gusteau.
Yes.
But he's actually not a character in the film. He is dead before the film begins, and his only role after that is to be a kind of moral representation of Remy's own conscience.
A Jiminy Cricket,
essentially a Jiminy Cricket. So he has no character of his own.
I do like the twist that he's dead. I will say that.
Yeah.
Like, when you see in the very beginning, like, the interviews with him and whatever, and you're like, oh, he's going to be a crucial character, and then, like, Remy's shock that he's dead kind of, is mirrored by the audience, and it's supposed to be, and I think they did that well enough.
Yeah, I think that works.
By the way, he's dead.
As an emotional point, I think that works well.
Yeah.
Because it means we're already invested then in the emotional fallout of his death.
Right.
Yeah,
Where you can tell that he's, like, idolizing this cook, or chef, and then he finds out that he's dead, and it's like, wow, you didn't even get a chance to, like, fully realize your dream. He's already
It also helps us relate a little bit better to Linguini, who is just discovering that this guy was his father,
Yeah.
and too late to ever actually know him as a person, which I think is quite an effective emotional moment.
Yeah. Okay, so no one reacts to rats correctly in this movie is my next note. So the old lady gets out a shotgun. We're going to go through just like every reaction to rats now. The old lady gets out a shotgun and blows holes all through her own house in order to kill 2 rats.
Yeah.
And let me again, she's reacting strongly as she should because there are rats in her home, but a shotgun is interesting. But what really is interesting, I already said something's interesting. Whatever, it's interesting again. Is that when they leave and are on little rat boats going down the river, she follows them.
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, this is vengeance now. This is vengeance
It's no
for my
longer.
ceiling."
It's no longer about hygiene and safety. It's now revenge.
Yeah,
It really just
She just likes
suggests to
killing
me,
rats.
it really suggests to me that the reason rats are treated the way they are is not because they spread disease, but because people just hate them, just actually hate them.
Exactly. They which
strange.
is what contributes. See, it keeps coming back to this allegory. Is like
becomes-
she's not about
yeah.
like why she dislikes rats. She saw them as intruders.
Yeah.
She got a shotgun. She followed them when they left to still try to kill them. This has some implications. We don't like that. But yeah. So and then of course there's also the implication of like they had boats, and this old woman presumably saw that and wasn't like, huh.
Saw them sailing
weird.
away with little bits of like
Yeah, using a
driftwood
spatula as an
equipment,
oar,
yeah.
and just like, and like her granddaughter comes to visit and is like, "How are you doing, Nana?" And I saw some rats. They made boats, and it's like, "That's nice, Nana. This is why we put you a house in the middle of nowhere, is like keep you from hurting yourself and others." But yeah, so that's her reaction, and then we have the cook's reaction when they see Remy in the kitchen when he's trying to escape. Where he's like, "A rat," and somebody grabs a broom and like knocks him, and I was like, "Yeah, a rat, knock him into the soup."
Or they all chase him with cleavers and chef's
Yes.
knives. Yeah, which again, as just a comic cartoon bit, that's fine.
Yeah.
People sort of intuitively understand that's just cartoon logic, right?
Yeah.
So people are disgusted by rats, they go after it violently. Whatever. It's something that comes up a lot. That's then contrasted with how seriously we're supposed to take the fact that humans kill rats.
Yeah.
Which is a core part of the film later.
It's like
You can't have both of those things in the same story.
It's like the Dory problem, where her mental health issues are a joke throughout until the very end when we're supposed to feel bad for her. So yes, and then we have when he comes out of the sewer, he's outside a restaurant and a woman shrieks, and that I would understand if a rat suddenly like, you know, you saw one close to you, but they start like throwing or dropping, I'm not sure which, wine bottles, and either way it doesn't work. Like, what are you trying to do? Hit the rat with a wine bottle? Like, now your street's littered with broken glass. And if they're so shocked at seeing a rat that they're dropping wine bottles, that's still like, okay. I mean, you know, Paris sewers are legendary. I think you shouldn't be that shocked that rats are there. So it's all overreaction. And that is that. So I just wanted to point out that no one reacts to rats correctly in this movie. Oh my goodness, I have so many notes. All right, I'll say this quickly. They use the old lady to establish that humans can't understand the rat language, so they have a quick shot to what she's hearing when, I was going to say Emmy is shouting at Ramil, close enough. Remy is shouting at Emil to swing the lamp. It quickly shoots to like, oh, the woman hears rat chatter. And so that way for the rest of the movie we understand that while he can understand human language, humans do not hear him speaking English.
Yeah.
He's speaking rat language. So that was, I guess that's good. Good way of using the moment for exposition without being heavy-handed about it, I guess. I do love the Paris reveal. It gives me goosebumps every time. Like I said, they love the city. They love the location. It's just the people that they don't
they just have
like.
no patience for the people in it.
For those who don't know what I'm talking about, so Remy is climbing up and they have the weird thing where he sees 2 people fighting with a gun and then they're kissing.
It's kind of a montage of like, like
who he sees in
a
his apartment.
pastiche of European drama films,
Right.
I think is the idea, yeah.
And he eventually makes it up to the roof, and there's a slow pan up, and you realize he's in Paris at night with all the lights twinkling, and of course the Eiffel Tower, I'm sure. Alan and I joke that there's just many Eiffel Towers in Paris because there's always a view of the Eiffel Tower no matter where you are. According to movies, there is.
I mean, it's a pretty big tower, I guess.
Or wait, yeah, I guess, yeah. I don't know if it's there or if it's in. It would probably have to be, but I don't know. It's definitely outside Linguini's apartment window.
That's right.
So it's at least there. But then he's at Gusteau's restaurant, and it's a beautiful, beautiful reveal of the city, and it makes it look gorgeous. Love that. Evil chef is short. Discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Evil Chef is not only short. Pixar has a problem with short people. If we ever re-record our Incredibles podcast, we'll have to, because so a little peek behind the curtain. When I was just like starting out thinking about podcasting about children's movies, honestly, it was for teaching purposes. Me, Martyn, and Heather Sinclair did an episode about The Incredibles, and we talked at length about short people there because there are two in The Incredibles. There's the boss and Edna Mode. But in this movie as well, we see that Pixar thinks that short people are either evil or hilarious or both. In this case, both. And it's a little bit degrading. But on top of that, and I'm going to say this as delicately as possible, he is decidedly... What did we say we were going to say? Semitic. Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's worth it. He's dark-skinned.
He's dark-skinned.
He has, very specifically Semitic features that are suggestive of...
Caricature features,
it's hard to describe the specifics of it without
sounding bad.
Without having a visual reference, I think is the key thing.
Yeah, but he definitely looks purposefully that way to me. Like, it has to be a conscious choice to give him those features and the darker skin. And I don't love it. Not gonna lie. This is the same thing as The Secret Life of Pets 2. It's just like they made some choices. And what you said I really found interesting is that, like, it may be unconscious in that those tropes of, like, the big hook-nosed villain are so ingrained in our society that people don't even realize the origins of those tropes.
Yeah, they use them so much and they've become such a shorthand for specific kind of character that you find a lot of filmmakers don't even question using it. Yeah. So
Severus Snape was supposed to be a hook-nosed villain with greasy hair. Mm-hmm. Jafar was a hook-nosed villain in the cartoon.
Yeah, actually, the villain from Ratatouille, I forget his name.
Skinner? Chef Skinner?
Yeah. He looks a lot like Jafar.
He does.
Very
a
similar
shorter version of
features.
Jafar, sure. And so that comes from somewhere historically. There's a lot of stuff that has roots in racism, anti-Semitism, anti-immigration policies from long ago, and it's time that maybe we evaluate those things and maybe change them. 2021, I think, well past time, but it is uncomfortable. I mean, this is okay. So this is nitpicky, and I say this almost every time, but we're allowed to nitpick because the point of this podcast is that we've seen stuff so many times that every little detail is like ingrained in our brains. So the soup that Linguini spills. Uh-huh. For those who haven't seen it, Remy is observing this Chef Gusteau's kitchen. The restaurant's called Gusteau's, and Alfredo Linguini, a fake Italian name with an American accent in France, just go with it, I guess, is hired as a plongeur. That's my French. No, I could probably do a little better. Plongeur. And which just, garbage boy, mopping up, whatever.
It basically means a kitchen porter, for anyone familiar with kitchen rules.
Yeah, and he knocks over a giant vat of soup. And that soup is clearly a vegetable soup of some kind. It's a brothy soup.
It's not absolutely clear, but it's like
I shouldn't say vegetable.
Pale-looking broth.
Yeah, it's a brothy soup, we'll say. It's a brothy soup. And then Remy knocks a box of cream into it, and suddenly it's like a chowder. I swear. He like changes. And my joke is like, when he's asked to recreate the soup, does he have to make the first soup and then spill half of it first? And then throw all the bad ingredients that Linguini threw in there? And it's like, okay, now I have my base to work with.
I think the way I understood it, I think what we're supposed to take from that is that his sense of smell is so refined that he can tell when it's right.
Yeah, he can smell ingredients, his dad says in the beginning. But I just find that hilarious to think that he like makes Linguini like make a different soup and then spill half of it out.
Very funny to imagine that process going through every time.
And it bothers me as well, as I've told you, that Skinner says, recreate the soup, take all week if you like, which implies that he thinks that he doesn't know how to do it. You said that like that was kind of the idea.
I think the idea is he thinks he just got lucky.
Yeah.
And he wants to say, take as much time as you need because he feels confident it won't happen again.
Right. Yeah, you had no idea what you were doing. You just accidentally knocked those good ingredients into the soup.
Accurate.
Yes, sure. I mean, Remy knew what he was doing, I suppose. But it sounds like to me that Skinner is saying like, hey, I know that you didn't really make that soup, and you have a rat learning to puppet your body through your hair, so take a week or so to get used to that, and then, make the soup again.
Take the time you need to practice the movements of this process.
I know you're going to need a montage, so, do that. Continuing on that kind of nitpicky trend, the amount of seasoning and herbs and stuff that Remy throws into that pot, negligible, okay? I make pea soup every now and then, and it's a very thick soup, and I put in, just 10 pounds of salt before I even start tasting it. And he's throwing in 2 leaves of thyme. And it's like, this is
a handful of mushrooms.
A handful, 2 cut onion, like onion half moons. Like that's what we called it. IHOP, sorry, half moon onions. But it's a vat of soup. It's a vat.
It's a kitchen size stock pot they're using. So the thing is huge. You could hide yourself inside it.
Yeah, your tiny rat handfuls of seasoning are not going to affect the soup's flavor. Maybe that's why Céline Leclerc makes the spicy yet subtle reference to the soup. It's very subtle flavor. It's almost as if a rat with very small hands added the flavor to the soup. And also her name's Leclerc. So everyone's name is something like Chef Skinner, I feel like skinning an animal. Leclerc, as Heather pointed out, means the eclair. Gusto means to taste or enjoy. In Spanish, gustar means to enjoy, but it might have GUST is a root that has to do with tasting and whatever. But so anyway, so yeah, that's my nitpick on the soup. That's my many nitpicks on the soup. And then a rat quick knock him into the soup. So they knock him into the soup, they don't. Linguini traps him in a jar, takes him past this giant cathedral for the kind of oh, you need your last rites because I'm going to kill you in the Seine. And he has a conversation. Again, I like this. The kind of I can't cook, but you can. And the rat kind of does the, well, maybe modest hand gesture. And it's a good interaction. And I like that Remy runs away at first when he releases him from the jar. I like that he's not instantly yes, I'm beholden to this man and must help him. His conscience is what gets the better of him there.
I would say I think that's a little weaker than how I would have done it. If I was making this film.
Well, script doctor it.
I think there's two ways you could approach this scene, and I think the way they chose is the weaker one, because what they suggest is that Remy comes back because he feels guilty, because he thinks that he owes Linguini for saving him, when Linguini didn't save him. Linguini was only there to kill him in the first place.
He just chose not to kill him.
He just chose not to kill him.
Which is a little different than
That's
saving.
not the same thing.
Yeah.
It never would have been a danger in the first place if not for Linguini.
Yeah.
So you don't get credit for not following through on your murder.
And Remy's pride, I gotta say, his one chance to cook or whatever, he's I could escape or I could stop and make this soup. And
I think it's the cooking thing that's the better angle to take here. Remy goes back because he sees an opportunity.
It's his one chance.
This is the one chance he'll get to actually cook for the first time in his life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a much, much stronger character moment. And it's a real shame that they kind of cut that out of that.
Yeah, it just seems like he's guilty. Yeah, I can see that. All right, we're almost done here. I would say, so real quick, like I said, there's a view of the Eiffel Tower, so he's supposed to have this terrible apartment, poorest of the poor, but with a view of the Eiffel Tower, that automatically makes that apartment prohibitively expensive. As soon as you have that view, it's now we can charge this much. It's like having an oceanside apartment in California.
It's a standard. It's an apartment you get in any city that's too expensive.
Yeah,
it's normal. It's not indicating that he's broke. That he can afford that apartment on a kitchen porter's salary is remarkable.
On perhaps inheritance from his dead mother before that, because he was unemployed. But it's we didn't even need the reminder that we're in Paris. You know what I mean? But anyway, so that happens, and then he puts the rat in his chef uniform because they haven't yet figured out that his hair bones are connected to his arm bones. And so they're in the kitchen, and they're trying to figure out how to communicate. And this is where Remy first gets to eat. And I guess they succeeded in that it makes me physically uncomfortable knowing how hungry he is and how long it takes to actually get him to eat. But he goes into the fridge, and this is where he gets the piece of cheese that is stolen, maybe. Mm-hmm. And they're having it out, and Chef Skinner hears Linguini yelling in the walk-in at the rat, and he opens the door, and Linguini quickly shoves Remy under his toque, his hat, his chef hat.
Well, I don't know if it's a toque, actually, is it? Because it needs to be the big one with the puff.
I think that's what he was...
to be a toque, right?
I don't know.
I don't remember.
He just calls it that later.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't know the phrase or the word until... But yeah, he calls it that. Anyway, under his chef hat, setting us up for the learning how they're going to work together bit. And Skinner asks, what are you doing in here? Which, to me, is a little strange, because it's well, you asked me to make soup, and the soup needs vegetables. Mm-hmm. I'm getting ingredients for the soup. It's a weird thing.
He says I'm familiarizing myself with the vegetables.
But he says instead, he could just be I'm getting ingredients for the soup. But instead he says, I'm familiarizing myself with the vegetables. And then, as he scoots out, Skinner yells after him, and I made sure to have the subtitles on for this. One can become too familiar with vegetables, you know.
Yep. Let's leave that one hanging in the air.
I almost want to end the episode on that, but I'll do one more point and then I think it's appropriate to end on figuring out the hair puppeting thing, right? I feel like that's a good end point. But that line, I know there are jokes for adults in movies, but wow, if you think about that line for even longer than like a second, it is very disturbing. Anyway, so Pixar, maybe not that again. Okay, so here we are. I want to talk about suspension of disbelief in this movie because there are two things that stretch it too far for me, despite the fact that we have sapient rats and like a rat that wants to be a cook, because that's typical cartoon fare. You know, you have an animal that can talk or at least understands human language and wants to do stuff, right? But as soon as we get to him pulling on Linguini's hair and controlling his body, is like, it takes a while. Like, that really does stretch my suspension of disbelief. It's like, because we know that's not how the human body works. Unless Linguini has a very specific condition that connects his hair to his muscles.
It's so strange, because it's such a strange thing. It's so core to the film, and it's never really explored in any way.
Yeah.
Like, it just happens. Like, can he do it with other people?
Yeah. If he jumped onto Colette's head, would he be able to...
How far does it go?
Yeah.
What are can Linguini override it if he wants to, or is it completely involuntary?
Yeah. I mean, he tries to override it at one point.
He says at one point that's strangely involuntary, but it's
Yeah.
not actually clear to what extent that's true.
Well, because just like he, when he's in love with Colette and she's handing him and she's like, Remy wants to use ingredient A and Colette says, no, use ingredient B. And he's trying to reach for it and Remy's fighting against him. And so it takes a lot of effort to actually grab what she's holding. So
we also know that it works while he's sleeping.
Yes, because he
So
can
it's
literally
like
maneuver his
being
body.
puppeted.
Yeah.
Which, again, if that had been something that they just wanted to be the premise for this film, that would be enough for me. I think that would be like it would be okay for me to accept as like a suspension of disbelief. But it's that on top of everything else that's too much.
Yeah.
It comes off as too ridiculous, and it comes off as too much of a fantasy and it completely disconnects it from the grounded drama we're supposed to be getting in the film.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there is a fix for it somewhere. Like, he learns how to signal him, so Linguini kind of starts to understand almost like a Morse code from him, feeling, I don't know. But
yeah,
there seems to have been a workaround. The other thing, since we already brought it up, is the fact that Emile eats an entire bunch of grapes and they remain solid and grape inside of his belly, distending his stomach to look like he's got grapes in them. And then he falls and a wheel of cheese falls on him and shoots the grapes back out of him, and that's what hits Linguini on the neck and makes him realize that there are rats in the fridge. That's too much for me. Like, we have kind of, especially since this movie's all about food, to do something so unrealistic with how like eating works, and regurgitation, it's like,
and it's not.
I don't like that.
I don't think I necessarily would argue that unrealistic is the problem in itself.
Yeah.
It's the whiplash in tone here.
Yes.
Because we have this film which pays a lot of attention to the specifics of like how a kitchen works, and what the different things in a kitchen do, and how you cook. Like it is aware of different cooking methods. It's aware of all these different things you should do. It's very grounded in that way.
Yeah.
And it wants you to consider seriously things like how people eat. Like, how do they eat? What's safe to eat? How often do they need to eat? Like, how are they going to feed themselves when they're starving? These are all big questions the film wants you to think about. And then it also has a scene where a fat rat falls over and spits a bunch of grapes out.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, how do you want me to feel?
Yeah.
Because this is supposed to be a very tense moment.
Yeah.
Because we have Linguini having this heart-to-heart with Remy, where he doesn't know yet that Remy has hidden all of his family in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm sorry for what I did. I should have treated you better.
And Remy started to feel guilty.
And then you have this comic moment, which is farcical. It's not connected to anything else going on.
That's good.
It's a ridiculous thing which doesn't really fit with anything else that's happening.
Brought on by Emile's fat stereotype character not being able to keep himself from eating.
It doesn't make any sense as a thing that's in this scene.
Yeah, it doesn't. Anyway, so where we're leaving off is Remy has learned how to puppet Linguini, And we will catch you next week for the conclusion of Ratatouille, I suppose. I hope. Or, we'll just keep talking about Ratatouille until December, whichever,
whatever we wanna do.
We'd be kind of aping the worst idea of all time. Hey, if you haven't listened to the worst idea of all time, it's a great podcast. These two guys from New Zealand watch a terrible sequel every week for the whole year, so 52 times, and they just record their thoughts every time. It's great. So thank you if you're listening right now and you are one of our listeners from like 10 weeks ago or whenever we started this hiatus, thank you for your patience. But also thank you for existing, thank you for listening, and thank you for helping us to maintain our marbles for one more week. I will put some stuff in the description. I don't know. I have a book out. You can also do a GoFundMe and get some glass for me. You literally can do that now. Like, I finally have access to a glass shop, so I can, send you something like a pendant or whatever. I made a fried egg pendant. It's pretty cool.
It's very cute.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I'll put some stuff. I don't really want to plug me. Can we get your socials, Martyn, real quick?
Oh, yeah.
Where people can find you?
So, you can find me on Twitter at isthismartyn. That's ISTHISMARTYN. I don't tweet that much, but I retweet a lot of people, so there's that. Just Martyn Bryson on Insta, MARTYN BRYSON. I have a couple podcasts out there. They're on kind of a temporary hiatus while I figure out how to run them going forward. But there's The Haven is the one I've worked on the most. It's a D&D actual play podcast. It's going to be transitioning into a fiction podcast, which I'm working on at the moment. And I have a couple of other smaller things I don't really want to announce yet that are in the works. So I'll leave that one a mystery, but keep an eye out for those if you're interested.
For sure. So until next time, maybe go watch Ratatouille and see if we missed anything. And
oh, we definitely did, but whatever.
Yeah, honestly, I joked about talking about this movie for weeks, but there's so much to unpack in this movie. But we're going to do our best. And thank you so much. So until next time, I am Rebecca.
Yeah, I'm Martyn.
And for the record, Alan exists.
I haven't murdered and replaced Alan, don't worry.
That we know of. Bye, friends.
Bye.